Hi, this is Attorney Mike Rev. I'm coming to you from Chicago as usual, and every time I think I've hit the bottom of the hole, there's more. I've got a new one today. We're going to call this one Jacquie Figg, Sovereign Citizen, and alternately we're going to call it Sovereign Citizen University number 3 because these horrible ideas come from somewhere and they come from places like this. Let's do it.
The woman you are about to see has done more to protect your rights than probably anyone you will ever see or meet.
I doubt it.
She is going to explain how she has found ways and reason to never obtain a driver's license and never register an automobile with any government agency, and how to cancel those things after they have been done for the obvious purpose of exercising our right to travel without interference by the state.
We have no such right. We have a right to travel, or we have freedom of movement. There's a right to travel between states that's implied in the Constitution. There is no constitutional right to drive on the roads for numerous good reasons, but it just doesn't exist, and that's truly the point of this nonsense. But let's carry on and have a laugh.
You may disagree with her positions.
I do.
You may consider her to be radical in her activism, but you will not be able to challenge her facts and legal references, and you will not be able to prove her wrong.
Well, sure.
The vehicle regulations she discusses in this video are only one small part of the work she has done to defend and restore individual rights. Her energy, her intellect, and her devotion to justice are unmatched in my experience.
Oh, you haven't had much experience, have you, my friend? You know, you'd think with all that white hair, you'd have better experience than that, but apparently not.
When anyone works to defend their rights, they are defending all our rights. When anyone fails to defend their rights, they put all of our rights in jeopardy. In many cases, that puts our property and even our lives in jeopardy. In the following interview, we are all privileged to hear how Jacquie Figg has battled for herself and for all of us in her lifelong campaign for freedom, rights, and justice.
Okay, so my name is Jacquie Figg, and I've been traveling without a license since around 2003.
Driver's license.
A driver's license, yeah, let's emphasize a driver's license. I first read the vehicle code back in 2003 and realized that it really didn't apply to me.
All right, before we get into her crazy, I just find it odd that she seems to have the hint of a British accent, very light, but she's out in California, and you know, just tell me what you think in the comments below.
Didn't include my property, and as such, I then sent out a series of letters to about 6 people, you know, the Department of Motor Vehicles, the Commissioner of the Highway Patrol, the Attorney General, and a few other people, the Department of Transportation, the governor of the state, and I very, quickly started.
You can imagine the governor of the state of California, 30 million people. Oh, I got a letter from Jacquie Figg here. She doesn't think she needs a driver's license. Let's peruse this carefully. What world do they live in?
To discover that I was right. I was correct. I did get a letter back from the Attorney General. And
you were correct in what?
In my assumption that I did not, it did not apply to me.
Wrong. But if you're going to make this assertion and you've got a letter, let's see it.
You did not need a driver's
I did not need a driver's license, and that I did not need registration for the cars or automobiles that I was using. So having gathered that, I then set about to cancel those documents, and I did that back around 2004 after a series of letters went back and forth.
Cancel which documents?
Driver's license and, driver's license and registration.
Cancel them by mail. You're giving written notice?
I gave written notice. It was actually a complete series. I would say I contracted out of the system.
Okay.
That makes no sense whatsoever. I know you like to sound fancy, but that just makes no sense. I mean, you don't contract out of something. I
did get those things notarized. I had everything sent by a notary ultimately.
Oh, fantastic. We got the notary involved, so you know everything's good.
Ultimately, and the conclusion that the group of us came to, when I say the group of us, I mean the 6 individuals I wrote to who worked for the state and myself, came to the conclusion that it was not for me. And
no, they didn't. You came to that conclusion. Nobody else cared. If the 6 individuals that you're speaking of, let's say you're one of them, so there are 5. I want to see letters from government officials saying, we agree with you. You do not need a driver's license. I want to see it. I want to see if you got somebody to write that letter. If you did, let's put it on here.
Having the licenses.
Having the license, yeah. I issued my own documents. I issued my own identity document. I issued my own certificate of absolute title. Oh,
I love it. The certificate of absolute title is just as good as an affidavit of truth or the rabbit of Angor. Oh, Lord. Okay, so you can issue all the documents you want. The problem with documents is that they need to have meaning. They need to have legal meaning. Nobody else knows what you mean by the documents you made by scrawling with crayon on construction paper. It doesn't mean anything. It has no viability in court. Ultimately, if you have a dispute or a problem, you're going to end up in court. And a judge is going to look at it and say, that's cute. You made up some documents that have no meaning. Now let's get back into the facts and applying the law.
absolute ownership, not title. I issued my own bond for insurance purposes, or financial responsibility is really what it's called.
Now that sounds like a lot of work, a lot of
It was.
study. Okay.
It was a lot of work.
Okay. And this enables
Yeah, it's like coloring a lot of pages in a coloring book.
you to utilize the public highways without the licenses, is the idea.
Absolutely. And I was perfectly safe for a couple of years. I traveled.
Yeah, everyone else wasn't. With you driving around unregistered, uninsured, I'm sure. Given your thought process and your low functioning affect, I doubt you have any assets to pay anybody if you injure them accidentally. So I'm glad that you were safe, but the rest of society was not.
Around the place, had, you know, I didn't actually get stopped or anything. Nobody stopped me. I had my own plate made up, and everybody had been noticed, and it wasn't an issue. A couple of years into this, I did have an issue with an officer, and ultimately he arrested me, impounded my car, and at the time he discovered that my car was not in the system, that I was not in the system, and he could not understand it. He could not find any evidence of me existing. So
Yeah, I understand why I couldn't understand it, because it doesn't make any sense. I have serious doubts that you were driving significantly without getting pulled over with a made-up plate, unless you perpetrated a fraud and had something that looked like a plate. But even then, I would think that just by a random check, someone might call in your license for one reason or another and find out that it's not registered. Nonetheless, I'm sure you could drive around for a little while and just not have somebody notice. But for any serious length of time, I just don't believe this.
I know that my process had an effect. It had actually, wiped out any recognition of me.
Well, it made me laugh. That's the only effect I can see so far.
Within the system, and I had received a couple of small tickets previously.
But he should not have arrested you then.
No.
So how did that resolve?
Well, it wasn't.
I like this. Oh, he should not have arrested you. I mean, look at this softball interview we've got going on here. No questions about any of this stuff. I'd like to see a driving abstract for her. I mean, the problem is I don't know what her personal behavior is. So maybe she just doesn't drive much. But if she's driving at all, there's going to be an abstract just full of stuff. She's going to have all sorts of problems. And they do what they usually do, is they come on and lie about the results in court. And unless people have access to it, they don't know. And most people just don't believe them. But some people think, oh, maybe. And some unwary people will try it, and they'll end up in jail.
Actually, too good. What happened was, about 8-9 hours after I was arrested, they managed to locate old tickets, and which included the automobile I was driving, and technically they put me back into the system. Ultimately, this resulted in my having a bail of about $920,000 for driving without a license. I was $1 million baby.
How did it get that high?
Because, yeah,
that shows you right there what's going on. She knows she's wrong. She absolutely knows that none of this makes sense, but she's seeking attention and validation, and she's getting it right there. I mean, I'm giving it to her right now, but whatever. It's still funny.
kind of another interesting story. Well, they couldn't hold me. Every time I was arrested, I would sign as the authorized representative and I would be released. So I was constantly cite and released, and I would never go into court because there was no consent. And we'll get into that in a second. The element of consent is the major element. Anyway, this went on for a number of years, and slowly the bail kept going up and up and up, because every time they got me, I would, have this way out. What I really would like to explain today is the major elements that have enabled me to come to these conclusions. I started off with these conclusions.
The major element is delusion.
And I've pretty much proven that the conclusions are correct.
Okay, now before we go on,
Sure.
are you still under $900,000 threat? In other words, if people hear this and you owe $1 million and you are a fugitive from justice, then they will not want to
No, not at all. No, ultimately I ended up with $100 fine, and yeah, that's everything's been dealt with. Yes, I'm not a fugitive. Yes.
As usual, it's just claims that with no backing whatsoever that I don't believe. I don't know what else to say about it.
I did make a mistake, but that's a whole nother issue. We have tested out these theories with other people as well.
Yeah, so have a lot of other people. I've got a whole channel full of it. It doesn't work.
But anyway, so let me explain the main elements of what I discovered. The California Vehicle Code only applies, it's a private code. Let me emphasize that. It's a private code, and it only applies to certain persons.
I mock your value system. You also appear foolish in the eyes of others.
It only applies to certain property within a certain location.
Okay, so now we're going to do a crazy reading of some statutory language that it's never been construed that way, and give a bunch of people false hope and get them in trouble. It's despicable.
We think it applies to all of us, everything, everywhere. We're wrong.
It's a belief system. It's definitely a belief system, and I would say, many police may have that same belief system too.
Yeah, they do. They have the belief system that the law applies to people in the state of California. Mm-hmm. And they're correct in that belief system.
Probably all.
Probably all of them.
They're enforcing.
They're specifically hired, or they're hired for their specific beliefs and attitude. They're not going to hire somebody that's timid or anything. So somebody who's a control freak, who really likes to assert themselves, and that's what they do. And they're told that they have this power and authority. For instance, they'll be.
I like some basis for these wild accusations. I really would. The law enforcement community in California has got to be huge. I don't think they're all aggressive crazies, but that's what she's trying to say here. It just slides that in like it's nothing. Okay.
Be told you have power and authority throughout this state. I don't disagree with that statement. However, we need to look at what is this state. So
this state could be something different than what we all think it is.
It is. In this state is the terminology, but yes, and and I've spoken to California State Patrol officers, let's call them, or state law enforcement officers, and they will tell you that their power extends everywhere within this state.
And they are flat wrong.
No, they're right.
I love how the sycophant got it wrong. He was trying to please her so much, but that wasn't the lead she was looking for.
Okay.
It does extend to everywhere within this state.
But we have to understand what this state
or
means.
What within this state means.
How is that defined?
Absolutely. Let's get to that. Let's first look at the person upon which the vehicle code applies. So I'm going to read a section of the vehicle code which tells you.
Very good.
So this comes from the California Vehicle Code section 21052. The provisions of this code applicable to the drivers of vehicles upon the highways apply to the drivers of all vehicles while engaged in the course of employment by this state, any political subdivision thereof, any municipal corporation or any district, including authorized emergency vehicles subject to those exemptions granted such authorized emergency vehicles in this code.
So most people literally do not fall in those categories.
No, technically, the vehicle code is, like I say, a private code, and you have to kind of look at the history of the vehicle code. Originally, it was a place for us to keep information on our collective property.
Wrong. You don't need to look at the original intent of the vehicle code. You need to look at the vehicle code as it stands right now, number one. Number two, her interpretation of it is wrong. And of course, the section she reads is cherry-picked and read out of context. I'm going to read you a little bit that I found, and it shows quite clearly that you got to register a vehicle.
So the car that the sheriff is driving, the car that our other officers use, public officers, absolutely. It was not intended for our private property. Original jurisdiction for that was filed with the Secretary of State, and it was like $2 for the entire time that you would own your car.
Okay, well, we're going to look at this really quickly. California Vehicle Code, Section 4000. A person shall not drive, move, or leave a standing upon a highway or in an off-street public parking facility any motor vehicle, trailer, semi-trailer, pole, or pipe, or dolly, or logging dolly unless it is registered and the appropriate fees have been paid. It goes on, but it couldn't be clearer. Any person who has a vehicle and wants it on the road or in a public parking facility has got to register it. That's what the code says.
And we'll call it an automobile, which is really the proper terminology for it, not a motor vehicle, which is something totally different. So automobile would be everything, and motor vehicle is a very minute portion of that bigger pie.
Well, there you have it. She goes on with her word salad, and she's going to play with the definition of California and the definition of motor vehicle versus automobile and all sorts of other nonsense. But at the end of the day, she's got nothing. You got to have a license to drive, and you got to register your vehicle if you want to operate on the roads in California, like every other state in the country. It's as simple as that. Here at Law Talk, we like to have fun with silly stuff that happens in court, and every once in a while, and completely by accident, I assure you, you might learn something. Thanks for watching.